Welcome everyone to a product review. So I haven't done a product review for a very long time, and recently been painting a lot of Marvel Crisis Protocol buildings with lots and lots of small bricks. So the best way to paint lots and lots of small bricks over a large area, a raised pattern, is to dry brush. Now dry brush has a bit of a bad rap. You know, a lot of people have dry brush over the years, or seen dry brushing over the years, and said it looks chalky. So I thought I would up my game slightly. So rather than using an old £1 makeup brush from a pound shop, I thought I would up my game slightly and buy these. So these aren't very expensive at all. Army Painter dry brush, apparently master class dry brush. So you have 3 brushes in here, and as you can see I left the price tag on, very reasonable price. They're all about that kind of price. I got these from a local hobby shop, so if you're in the UK and you're in the southwest, please check out JK Games in Plymouth. Real nice guy, I've known him for years, fantastic in the hobby. So if you go in there and buy things and just have a damn good hobby chat for half an hour, he loves it. Pester him all day long. Yeah, so there are more expensive dry brushes out there, but I thought rather than going crazy and spending £80 on a set of dry brushes, I would, like I said, improve my game. So I've gone from £1 brushes to a pack of 3 for £14. Who knows, if I really get on with these and I decide to up my game a little bit more, there are other companies out there, you know the ones, apparently are really good. The reason I haven't gone all in and got those is A, cost. At the moment can't really afford it. You know, times are hard for everybody out there, but they are fantastic, so I hear. And the other thing is, and the main thing is, I'm not a big fan of dry brushing. Terrain, yes, for me. Especially just standard tabletop terrain, I don't care too much about. Something with high texture like canyon style terrain, brilliant. Buildings, I care a bit more about, so I'm going to try it on them, but miniatures, no, at the minute I wouldn't. So if I get on well with these and they give a very good result, then I'm going to go for possibly better dry brushes and then try them on miniatures. So yes, I do agree. This is a bit of a class for myself as well as you guys out there. Hopefully you find it useful to improve your dry brushing, and a bit of a product review for the Army Painter Masterclass dry brush set. So these lovely brushes. So I'll give them a go. The building I am painting, or attempting to paint, like I said, for Marvel Crisis Protocol, has a lot of bricks. So there's 4 sides, as most generic buildings do, and I'm going to try a different technique on each side, see what I like the most, and if I'm happy with one of them, which hopefully I am, then I'll copy, rinse and repeat on all 4 sides. So here goes. So tip number 1, I would suggest a dry brush should not be bone dry. In my opinion, a dry brush, so I've got a bit of, you can see I've been doing some DIYing at home. It's a bit of an MDF plank here. I don't feel they should be bone dry. That's what gives the chalky texture. When you really dry out your brush using a bit of kitchen towel or something like that, you get rid of all the moisture, and it does leave you just with pure dry pigments. So what I'm going to do, each of these brushes, obviously there's 3 different sizes. I am going to leave the brush slightly moist, that's right, I said that word, and remove a lot of the paint off the brush on something non-porous like this. Well, it's slightly porous I suppose, but not that porous enough to take all the moisture out of the brush. So I'm going to get the brush a little bit wet. I'm going to mix up some brick-ish colour paint. For this, I'm using a couple of GW paints mixed together because I don't have anything in my arsenal that I think is fully brick-ish. So I'll mix something up and then we'll pick a brush and go to town. So brush number 1, the biggest brush out of the packet. So this chunky monkey. Decided to mix up that kind of colour paint. So almost like a plummy kind of brick colour. I wasn't going to go with too crazy a bright. So I'm going to go with that kind of level. I'm going to go as softly as possible with these bricks. So I've got a reasonable amount of paint on the brush. I can always add more if I need to. A bit of an angle. And like so. So that's the first try. Now I'm not going to edit all my mistakes out in this video because this is a learning process for me as well. I have to admit, when I first dry brushed, I was using kitchen towel. So I am going to try. So with a dry brush, I don't really want to get in all the nooks and crannies, so I'm not pressing hard at all. You notice my paint is quite wet. It's not straight out the brush, straight out the pot wet. It's not bone dry. So the idea is, I'm going to pick up the bricks, and later on I'll pick out the detail, i.e. I'll paint that and that a different colour. But all I'm concentrating now is the main part of the building. So I'm going to go with brushing down here. Doesn't look too bad. That is not bad at all. So I haven't gone bone dry. But when my brush gets dry, so that was probably a bit too heavy there. When my brush is reasonably dry, I'm going to try another side of the building. So normally you get like a really chalky residue, which is fine I suppose on, like I mentioned previously, canyons, bricks maybe look a bit dusty, fair enough. But I want to try this technique on this and see if I can get it good enough that I could, if I wanted to, paint a miniature. These brushes are super soft. And like I said previously, I have used makeup brushes and they are soft as well. And I think the larger the brush, generally the better it is when I've done terrain in the past. As you can see, still a bit too heavy on the paint there. I have not dipped it back in my palette. It's still holding plenty of paint. And I'm not putting any real effort into this at all, just slowly dragging it on those bricks. So, quite happy with that. You can see there's a little bit of shine there, so you can just show that that there is still fairly wet paint. So that's what I'm happy with at the moment. That was too heavy with the paint. So you need to brush off a lot of the paint, but not keep it bone dry. And certainly don't leave the brush dry itself. So wash these off straight from the packet. Tried off the majority of the excess, so it's still moist but not dripping. And I am just dragging these bricks at a bit of an angle here. So I worry if I go that way, it's going to fill in the gaps and replace the watercolour with red. And the same if I go down or up, obviously, the other sections. So the bricks in this building will not be perfect. You know, it's an older building. It's not like every brick is going to be pristine. It might be a bit busted. So I'm reasonably happy straight away. I'm trying to go left to right to prove my point about I probably shouldn't be doing this. And it doesn't look as good. So exactly proves my point. Try to keep it diagonal if possible. Now if I didn't use a dry brush, you imagine how long it would take to paint this building. Now a lot of people, you know, don't have the time. If you have the time, fantastic. If you want to paint each individual brick, amazing. It will look pristine, it will look amazing. You can make the building like it was built yesterday. None of those bricks damaged. Red's really popping, fantastic. If that's the style you want to go for, brilliant. But even on a new build, you'll find that not all the bricks are up to scratch. You've got that impression in your head that they are, but if you get close and have a look, they're not that good. Later on I will do some weathering when I'm happy with the building. You can see when I press too heavy there, that's still quite a lot of paint. Still haven't dipped it. This is a lot of paint it's holding. Considering how much I've wiped off, you can see on the palette that I mixed up the initial colour there and got lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. That's about the stage before I started adding it to the building, and it is holding a lot of paint. I mean, I'm not pushing very hard at all. So pretty chuffed with these. Yes, makeup brushes do a job. So if you're doing rough old terrain, scrap buildings, canyon pieces, something that's had PVA glue and sand maybe, because you don't want to kill these brushes, go for it, not a problem. But I would recommend on a building or something you care about a bit more, you want a bit neater, these brushes are pretty nice. So that isn't looking too bad. Yeah, it's a little bit shiny. You can see where I've gone a bit too heavy around the window there at certain angles. But if you have the paint nicely on these brushes, nice and even, you're taking your time, you're not pushing, just gently dragging, and you've got plenty of paint on these brushes. I'm not talking like you would on a normal paintbrush, but enough to wipe on the board or whatever you're using, a non-porous surface that knocks off the majority of the paint. That's looking pretty good. And remember, you can always add to it. It is difficult at that stage to try to blend in. This is a test piece for me. Like I said, I'm not going to edit this out. I'm going to show you the mistakes that I made. Because now I'm trying to compensate and press a little bit harder around that area to blend that in. But I think once the whole building is done, this is going to look pretty good. So I'm going to have a bit of fun. So this is the biggest brush. I would try the medium one and the smallest one on the other sides and come back and show you. Because you don't want to see me painting this whole building for the next hour. So a few things have remained true from all those myths about dry brushing. It's nice to evenly apply the paint to the dry brush, so really circle it in my opinion, on the palette. Because if you don't, you could get areas that are darker than others, like so, and try to apply, this is the hard bit, I feel, even pressure on each stroke. So, on a wall like this, nice and even, so that stroke should be the same pressure as the next. If you don't, that's when you get a darker stroke in places than the others. So all that feels nice and even. So don't apply too much pressure, and don't apply too much in one area. So that's reasonably even. And always add more if you need to, but you can't take away. So I can keep plugging away with that. I'll zoom in so it looks a little bit more obvious. Too much pressure, too much paint, clogs in the gaps. So that has remained true. And try to get it one direction as well. If you do that, it will obviously fill in all the gaps. But I've been doing it at that angle. Now I'm doing it at this angle. It may look a bit goofy. I'll tell you what, even the small dry brush in the kit is good for working in the areas around the windows on this particular building. So test aside, it works out pretty well around the bits of the building there. So what I'm going to do is apply more paint again over the building to try to get a nice even tone. So a nice big brush is key. But these aren't bad. For the price, I think it's quite good. Especially if you're going to be painting, in this case, lots and lots of bricks. But don't dry out the brushes in paper towels or sponges. Use a palette and don't get that brush bone dry. Unless you want a dusty texture, like I said, on rocks or on bricks. If you want that, brilliant. But I do find dry brushing isn't dry brushing. It's a slightly dry brush. But it's a bigger brush, generally. So the term dry brushing is a myth. It's not really that dry. So this is a pretty dry brush now. I would have to apply it heavily, which you don't want to do. And under the camera, don't know if you can see, but that has quite a grainy texture. So yeah, messing around with these brushes, you really want to figure out what level of moisture you want, how much paint on the brush you want, but don't get it bone dry. That's too much, that's about right. So you want it too little, too much, somewhere in the middle. But no, these Army Painter brushes are pretty good. Obviously I'm not being paid by Army Painter to say that. I believe these are definitely a step up from makeup brushes. I'm going to have more practice on buildings and pieces of the terrain, bigger pieces, before I use it on models. That's just my personal preference. But in this video I'm keeping all the mistakes. I'm not going to edit anything out, so you can see what I've learned, and hopefully you can learn from that. So I'll keep painting this building, and hopefully I'll put the picture on our House of Chaos community page over on Facebook when this is all done. But yeah, it's a video on me trying out this product. It's a pretty damn good product, and gaining more confidence with dry brushing and breaking a few of those urban myths. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope this video helped. Hopefully pick up at least one tip or technique, and I'll be safe.